Fabulous. All right, thank you. Yeah, it looks really good. It looks really good. I'm really surprised. You can do that too, Amina. Amina, you can do that too. If you hover over your, you know, right? The only issue with me, and I know it's a bit late for me that we got 11 minutes, but the issue with me doing that and the name check and stuff is that I have to name check and then physically click everybody in. What's that? Cleveland, is that you? Please.
Welcome to Congregate Live, our weekly live stream that goes out and has been going out over the lockdown period for the past 2 to 3 months now. We've had a regular Friday night slot, 9 p.m., really connecting the globe. And that's quite literally what's happening. We have been bringing artists, academics, thinkers, and creatives really from Australia, from around Europe, the UK, is where we're live streaming from right now, and in the US as well. And really the intention was to bring some light through this kind of dark period that we've been through, where, we've had the lockdown and the COVID-19. And then, of course, those who may have tuned in last week, Black Lives Matter, this kind of situation that is hit us and has been, kind of intensified the experience of lockdown even further, as people kind of look around for answers and look at how we can resolve. And what we have been doing is just really a little bit off our own backs. I've been running this live stream format as a way to bring something fresh. I always like to describe it as a bit of an immersive kind of streaming experience to deal with the kind of Zoom gloom that we're all experiencing. Fed up of sitting in that kind of interface where you've just got all these videos. We're trying to mix it up a little bit, bring a little bit of music, a bit of poetry. I'll be drawing a little bit on my iPad, which I've been doing every week with my Apple Pencil here on my iPad, which you'll see the screen shortly. But the format, we are always kind of evolving with that format, and also being joined by, as our kind of team has been growing as well, as the kind of the interest grows for our show. We have new partners on this show, this season 2. We had a little bit of a break during the Ramadan period where we kind of just switched off for 4 weeks just to collect our thoughts and kind of get our energy levels back up again. And now season 2, we have the University of Warwick supporting this live stream. So James Hodkinson, who's going to be running today's show, is going to be through his work, he's been kind of bringing some great kind of ideas and themes to the mix. And of course, we have Raise Karma as well. You may have noticed we're live on Raise Karma, who are based in the US, a YouTube channel. So at the moment, we're going exclusively live on their channel. So you must sign up. It's a new platform. It's a virtual art installation, is how they describe it. There'll be a whole bunch of artists, and our show is the very, very first show for the Raise Karma platform. So we're kicking it off with our friends in the US who are watching right now. And so we're very grateful for them to be supporting our next 3 more. For the next 3 weeks, we will have one every Friday supported by Raise Karma on their platform. So without further ado, I want to just kind of share who we have in the stream today. And we have, of course, starting with our regular artist, director, who is Clevland Watkiss. So, Cleveland.
Hey. Cleveland. Good evening, everyone. Tuning in. Welcome to Congregate. Not sure what season this is. What season? Always forgetting. What season is this?
Season 2, episode 1.
There you go. Season 2. Turn it up. Okay, there you go. How's that? Good. So yeah, hey, good to be back with the team. And yeah, we're gonna have a wonderful session. Thanks for everyone for tuning in from around the globe, and yeah, looking forward to what unfolds this evening.
So Cleveland over in London, or just outside of London, near Stansted Airport. I always remember that. You're near Stansted Airport.
That's the one.
Not many planes flying over your head, I'd imagine, at the moment.
No, there's nothing going on.
So jumping from Cleveland, we are going to go to Australia, actually. We're going to jump back to our guest who's back in the UK. So we'll do London and then jump to Melbourne, Australia. James Hodkinson from the University of Warwick. He's not based in Melbourne. Well, I'll let him explain that. You're going to be talking to him shortly anyway, hearing from him. But James is currently in Melbourne, and I think it's very early over there. So, James, over to you.
Yeah, good morning, good evening, everybody. I'm going to try and bring a bit of shape to the discussion tonight. You'll find out exactly what the theme is any moment. I should also name check another spoken word poet Noor Abu Zaid, who is a friend of mine who's based here in Melbourne, who's not with us live, but some of his work is going to be dropped into the show a little bit further, as you'll see as the events unfold. So I'm not going to say too much for now. I'm going to step back and let Mohammed finish introducing everyone.
Sure.
Good morning.
Thank you. And now we've got Noor Abu Zaid, who's also based in Melbourne. We'll see from him shortly in a recorded piece given. And we're going to jump back to the UK in Liverpool and introduce to you Amina Atiq, who's a spoken word artist who I saw her piece recently. I was very impressed with the piece she wrote about her city of Liverpool, which she was very passionate about. So Amina, do you want to just say?
Yeah, hi guys, how's everyone? Thank you so much for having me. Just looking forward to it. Just a new world of just Zoom and Skype and online performances now. But yeah, can't wait till we dig into the theme, the importance for spoken word artists and any art form really.
Brilliant, thanks Amina. So I'm gonna hand over to James, who is gonna be yes, Manpreet. Before I do that, Manpreet Darroch, he's kind of invisible at the moment. He's kind of manning the decks, right? So just because you're going to hear his voice every now and then, but you won't see. Yeah, you will be hearing his voice shortly when I bring him in. So Manpreet, who is manning the decks, visual experience, who's kind of like there pressing the buttons and making sure the machine is well oiled and things are moving along. So can we hear from you, Manpreet?
Nice to be back. Like you were saying, we had this whole Congregate season 1, this whole experience that kind of just came about organically because of, like everybody's been saying, this whole lockdown season, this whole lockdown period has forced us to embrace new normal ways of connecting with people, of bringing people in. And you know what's really weird? Because I actually haven't seen Mohammed, I think, for about 4 months, right? But I've seen him every day almost. We've been connecting online, and we've all as a team been coming up with this incredible experience that we like to put together, and this incredible ideas that putting this whole stream into existence. So yeah, I'm really excited to be moving forward with Raise Karma. We're moving forward with University of Warwick, and of course Soul City Arts, the organization that we represent, to bring you this kind of immersive, exclusive live stream. So it's really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it. Mohammed, back to you.
Yeah. So yes, I'm gonna hand over to James, who's gonna host this theme of today, which is the power of words. And of course, remember, there's gonna be conversation, but throughout we're gonna, as like we do in our usual Soul City Art style, we're weaving in and out of conversation and visuals you'll see upon the screen that we've cooked up especially for this show. And of course, musical maestro Cleveland in the background, who's going to be weaving in and out. And I will be attempting to illustrate that as we go along with my little Apple pencil here. Over to you, James.
Also, don't forget, before we just go to James, don't forget that we're live on YouTube, right? So it would be really good to hear where you guys are tuned in from, to read in your comments. We really want this to be an interactive experience as well. So don't forget to, however you feel, whatever you're going through, whatever's being evoked by the things that you're seeing and experiencing on the screen, drop it in the comments. And every so often we want to shout people out. Treat this a little bit like a live radio experience as well. Otherwise, what's the point in us being live? We want to hear from you. We want to hear from the guests, all right? So without further ado, we continue.
We're concerned that some countries have either not taken this seriously enough or have decided there is nothing they can do. We're concerned that in some countries, the level of political commitment and the actions that demonstrate that commitment do not match the level of the threat we all face. This is not a drill. This is not the time to give up. This is not a time for excuses. This is a time for pulling out all the stops. Countries have been planning for scenarios like this for decades. Now is the time to act on those plans.
Dark sounds there and dark words from, you've heard there in the middle of that piece of sound, the voice of Tedros Adhanom, who's a leading figure in the World Health Organization, warning us all about the lockdown. It's a piece of sound that I came up with a while ago, and shout out to the guys at Salt City for putting together that video footage to support it there. Tonight is all about language, the power of words, language in lockdown. Language, as I think we'll see, shapes our experiences. Language is given to us as we learn it. Language is the thing that we use to communicate. But language is also plays a massive part in the media and in the news, in headlines, in social media. And it also helps build the landscape that we interact with. And it shapes and weighs into all our experiences all of the time. And I think that's going to be the key of what we're talking about tonight. So if you listen to what Tedros is saying there, he's using this language. This is not a drill, he says, as his voice kind of echoes out. And that's kind of, to my ear, become quite a familiar kind of battle cry. And I use the word there, battle cry, during this pandemic, during the lockdown. We've heard lots of different leaders of all political backgrounds and descriptions talking about there being a war against the virus, a battle back against the virus. The drill sounds like a kind of military operation, doesn't it? That we're somehow needing to get in shape and stay alert and be ready to fight back against this virus all of the time. And so a lot of the language that's been surrounding this, and that was reflected in that piece of sound, has been quite dark. And it's been part of the soundscape that we've been immersed in as we've gone online and listened to people and so on and so forth. It's very easy to sort of feel stirred up by that. But sometimes it's also easy to feel alienated by it. And one of the things that we're going to be trying to do tonight with the various guests is to show, I guess, the light and the shade, the two sides of language. Because language there it's a warning. It sounds a bit apocalyptic, doesn't it? This virus is coming to get us. But language is also the thing that we use all of the time. And it's also, I guess a means for pushing back. Language is the way that we respond when we see things not going well, if we feel that things are not turning out for us. The theme of language is really just a kind of window onto what's going on at the moment. I mean, we've had this pandemic experience, we've had the lockdown experience, we've had the explosion of protest following George Floyd and the resurgence of Black Lives Matter movement. These themes are not going away, and they're certainly going to be very much part of what we're talking about, responding to over the coming weeks. But today's window upon that material, on those experiences, is language and how words shape our experience of those things and how they give us the means to respond as well. I'm going to draw in another piece of media now just to have a look at. This is something which Mohammed picks up on online. It's a part of the ongoing legacy and tragedy of the Stephen Lawrence murder, and it's Stephen Lawrence's brother speaking online. So Manpreet, do you have that teed up and ready to go?
He used the word spectacle. Now, if you look up the word spectacle, it was about an event, a show. It wasn't a show or an event that happened to George Floyd. It was absolute public modern-day lynching of a man. What's the
key word that he uses?
Language, if we don't say the right things, then what we are doing, we're not giving this event the grandeur that it deserves.
I can't hear it.
Should I watch it really quickly?
Okay, so you saw there a video clip of Stephen Lawrence's brother. You recall Stephen Lawrence a couple of decades ago now, teenager in London who was murdered, and there was a very high-profile case around him and his death, but also about the way in which his death was dealt with or not dealt with by the police and by the authorities, and it became in many ways a tragically iconic thing. And his legacy goes on. And one of the things that his brother was reflecting on there was very much the idea of how language and the language surrounding his brother shaped that experience. I don't know if you're there, Mohammed. Can I pull you in for a second?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Something that this video grabbed your attention, didn't it? Can you tell me what it was that you were responding to? What caught your ear and your eye?
Sure. I mean, it's funny. It was the day before. We've planned this show well in advance, talking about the power of words, and then watching it was ITV's Good Morning Britain, and I see Stephen Lawrence's brother, who's also a public speaker and a motivational speaker, so he knows. And respects the power of words. And then he was just saying that it was described. Boris Johnson described what took place as a spectacle, and he said it's not a spectacle as you've seen in the clip, right? And he kind of broke it down that as soon as we kind of play with words, and we're playing people for in a game really, and that's what was. And I just thought it was really profound, quite as simple as how he put it as well. I thought it was really powerful.
Yeah. Thanks, man. And it's true that, isn't it? I mean, if you look at what's been happening, particularly over the last couple of weeks, how the language shifts depending on who you're talking to. When you're talking about a spectacle, this is not a spectacle. Yeah, these things are legitimate protests. These are people's lives that are being spoken about here. And to talk about it as a spectacle, instantly it becomes a kind of event. If you take the way in which the language has shifted. We've got protesters on one hand, and the protesters in some people's mouths become thugs. They become the mob, right? Probably the person who's actually very adept at doing this, unfortunately for many of us, is the president of the US, POTUS himself, Donald Trump. And there's actually Manpreet's going to drop in another source for us any moment, and that's a slide that's come up with. There's an image there of Donald Trump in a notorious tweet around the time when the protests were really just starting to kick off, where he said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, he says. So this guy is also, there's almost like a kind of dark poetic quality to that. This guy's playing with language like anybody else, but he's using it to single out people who you can argue are legitimately protesting to protect themselves, to protect their community, to push the value of their lives in the public eye. And he's tried to divide that protest movement, and he's trying to say, well, people who are attacking public property are fair game for the military or the police to go in. When the looting starts, the shooting starts. And there's a rhyme in it. So he's playing around with language, and the man is very adept at doing that. He's the guy who spawned, of course, the phrase fake news. And now you've got people walking around American cities pointing at legitimate journalists saying, you're fake news. You look at the power of those words, how fake news has migrated into the way we speak, and how it's changed people's relationship with the media, with whom they trust to get their news or don't trust anymore, right? So we have a whole range of, I suppose, people of all backgrounds using language to try and divide. So language is sometimes a weapon. Sometimes it's the battleground that we fight on. You've got Stephen Lawrence's brother there fighting back with language. Donald Trump, Boris Johnson, and politicians pouring out language as a kind of propaganda, right? So it's both a weapon and it's also a battleground. But we don't like to be too negative here on Congregate. We like to also think about what we can do to counter some of the negative experiences we're having. But in a shout out to our Raise Karma partners, they're running a season at the moment on a kind of strand of ideas which they're calling diseases of the heart, looking at spiritual maladies and problems of society. One of their themes has been recently negative thoughts. And it strikes me that the mindset that we've been in during the experience of lockdown, during the recent protests, has very much been kind of steered and impacted by the language that we're experiencing, and we're being triggered constantly, I guess, by the exposure to sort of the weaponized language that we get heard. If you are legitimately going out to protest and you hear thugs, thugs, thugs. I went out to an event in Melbourne last weekend and came back to find out that I had been part of a crowd of thugs, and I'd not. I'd been at a legitimate protest. So there was a kind of disjunction there in my experience. Anyway, thinking about then how language is something that we can use to respond as well, language is something that we can use to heal. We're also on that basis dipping into spoken word art this week. And that's why we've got two fantastic poets and Cleveland as musician, all of whom use language, words, voice in different ways to respond. So not only are we kind of criticizing or analyzing the way language is being used for better or for worse in media and politics, we're also thinking about how artists use language to shape their responses to all of these different things. So there we have it. That's kind of where we are. Language is our weapon. Language is a battleground. But also language is our refuge. Language is there as a thing which can help us express ourselves, hold on to our identity, explore our identity, heal at times of difficulty as well. In a minute, I'm going to hand over to Cleveland. Cleveland's going to, if that's all right with Cleveland, going to give us an initial little burst of sound for a few minutes to sort of try and pull together some of these first few ideas. Are you with me, Cleve?
I'm with you. No, just writing down some of the just some thoughts on what has been said. the sound, the narrative becomes a sound. The sound becomes a narrative. The sound suggests or has the intention, a meaning, and the sound has a meaning within. For better or for worse, the language becomes our weapon. For better or for worse, language becomes our weapon. Yeah, yeah. For better or worse, for better or worse, becomes our weapon. Language is our weapon. Language is our weapon, becomes a sound of intent. Future helping. Shake.
Amazing. Amazing. Thanks, Cleveland. That's Cleveland Watkiss, our resident musician, giving us a vocal improvisation around our theme of language and the power of words there. It's amazing the way you get sound and words to interplay. It's like a kind of cry of pain in there at the start, and then, oh, wow. Always love listening to it. I could sit there nodding to that all night, but the conversation goes on. The conversation goes on. And I'm delighted now in the next section to shift along and draw in another artist. And although I'm based down here in Melbourne, it warms my heart to hear a Liverpool voice speaking on the show, as I'm you might detect somewhere buried in my language the faintest trace of a Liverpool accent, because that's my hometown as well. And I'm delighted to introduce Amina Atiq, who is a real rising star in spoken word poetry now. We're going to go and talk to her a little bit about her background, about her language, and about her work and her relationship to language. And hopefully we're going to hear some of her work live online. So good evening, Amina. How are you going?
Hiya, I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Still early here, but it's great that you could join us live on the line from amazing Liverpool. So, Amina, you're anyone who Googles you will find out that obviously you identify very strongly as someone from Liverpool. So as such, you speak my language, which is the kind of Scouse dialect, which is already a kind of mixture. It's a mixing pot of kind of Northern English and Irish and all of the different kind of British dialects mixed in together. But then that's grown over the years. Liverpool as a port city has always been drawing in many cultures and into that melting pot. So the kind of English that you've grown up speaking is already a kind of a heady brew, isn't it, of different dialects and languages. But with your Yemeni roots as well, you have obviously a relationship to another language. Could you tell us a little bit about what language has meant to you over the years and how you related to it?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the brief for this live stream, I was a bit like compelled, like, where do I start? Do I start from my early teens? Do I start from when I became an activist? And the language is a process. Like, something that I wrote a year ago can mean something different today. and it just shows how we evolve and how language shapes us and our experiences. And language, like having a dual identity, like having a Scouse accent, wearing a hijab is, I'm like a political figure, like a political walking dead woman on the streets of London sometimes. Because sometimes like people stop me and like, how have you got a Scouse accent? You know, and or recently someone actually identified me as a Yemeni Scouse writer. I never labeled myself as that. It was only until someone came up to me and said, "You're that Yemeni Scouse writer," and I said, "What does that mean?" Can I have both? Can I be Yemeni and Scouse? Can I speak Arabic and English? And I think learning to accept that I have these two identities part of me shifted a lot in my poetry, shifted a lot in the way I use language. I felt like now I can talk about Yemen in my poetry, whereas before I felt like it's not my place. But then I didn't feel like I could write a poem to my British flag because I don't feel like I identify with it sometimes because I'm always reminded that I should go back home. So it's always been a battlefield. And I think it's a battlefield for oneself. Like, what does language mean to you first, and what impact do you want to have? And that is really important for a writer to ask themselves every single day, the impact that you want to make. And hence why, writers or any art form, they put themselves in such a vulnerable place because you can't take the poet out of the poem, and you can't have a poet without poetry. Same with an artist. So thank you for allowing me to obviously express that. It comes from also language comes from a difficult place as well. It's got a lot of different faces. When I heard the first racist slurs growing up, I thought it was a joke. I didn't know what they meant. I didn't know the impact. And it was only until I grew up when I used to write the racist slurs, I would feel angry, so angry that I'd not defended myself. So yeah, so it's been a journey, and I always read old work, new work, and I embrace that language that I used years ago, that young voice, my older, late middle 20s now, and I just see how you articulate yourself as well, you know, and also coming from Liverpool, it's such a political and socialist city, you learn how to articulate yourself to defend yourself by language. And but yeah, I mean, did that answer your question? Okay. I mean, I've gone
Yeah, absolutely.
all over the world.
Absolutely, it's amazing. It's an amazing answer. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, and you're right about the Liverpool dialect, isn't it? It's such a unique thing that as soon as you speak it when you're outside of the city, you instantly, it's assumed that you are. It's not English, is it? Do you remember? I think when I first encountered your, even for white Liverpudlians, Anglo-Saxon Liverpudlians, it's sort of you're not quite English if you're from Liverpool. And there was that. I remember seeing your work go live. I think it was alongside a hashtag which was Scouse not English. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that weird thing, isn't it? Because there's a sense that Englishness, nothing against English people. Technically, I am one, but I mean, there's that sense of Englishness as being quite a divisive kind of identity. It's quite white. It's St George's flag. It's sort of football. It's a bit Brexit. It's all kind of pulling in that kind of direction. And a lot of people, whatever their background, don't feel necessarily they want to identify with that in Liverpool. Could you say, just before we move on to hear from your work, could you say a little bit about the other language that you have roots in, a connection to, which is obviously Arabic, and your relationship to that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought my relationship with, English or my Scouse accent was difficult. But with Arabic one, I think it was the idea of the sense of like loss and belonging. Because it was only last year I was confronted by two white middle-aged men on the train who had told me that I should speak English in this country, and what had happened at that moment, I recorded at the scene because it was kind of like my resilience. I was terrified, but I don't know why I recorded. I just recorded myself speaking, and it's language again, because I felt like growing up, the only thing I had was language. Language was, and I always say poetry is my sword. I used to say to all the little bullies, you know, you're going to be a little character in my poem or my story. You know, that was like my revenge, you know. And so when that happened to me at 23 years of age, I didn't know what to do at that point. And I remember like feeling a sense of loss because I came to Liverpool at the age of 4 with Arabic on my tongue, no English. Over the years, now English is my first language. Arabic is so weak on my tongue. And sometimes I think to myself, that was a massive sacrifice just to integrate. And so I think now what I'm doing through my work and my poetry is reconnecting with Arabic poets to kind of like reconnect with just the sense of home through language. And I came across a poet called Mohammed Ali. He was a Yemeni poet at the time of the 50s, 60s. He was assassinated, but he was a socialist as well, a revolutionist. And as soon as I found out about his work, I was like, finally, I've got someone that I can really relate to. So I read a lot of his work. I've got translations of it. So yeah, I've used Arabic poetry as a lead way to basically gain back a sense of belonging or feel like I do belong. And yeah, it's still a journey. I mean, I'm just there. I've just arrived, and I'm just like, as a writer and obviously as an artist and as an activist, I just develop, I experiment, and I'm just yeah, I'm touching everything. I'm experimenting, and I'm really just taking risks with my work because I feel like there's a lot of healing as well. Um, when I read my poetry, a lot of people say they get emotional, and I always say I read my poem like the first day I wrote it. It's not like just a gig. I'm just doing a performance. I'm reading it the first time, and so a lot of people ask me, "How do you do that? How do you get that same emotion the way you wrote it?" And I said, all you have to do is be honest. If you are honest at the time you wrote that piece, every time you perform it, it will be the same way you wrote it. Yeah, so as you can tell, it's a lot. It means a lot to me.
Of course, yeah. Amazing. That's amazing to hear about that journey, and it's amazing to hear that the kind of two sides of language which we started off talking by. You know, when people threw racist slurs at you, you kind of you rolled up language like a snowball and threw it back at them and said, "This is, I'm going to hit you back with this." But it's also the place that you go to reconnect with your heritage. It's your healing space. It's all of those things, and it could be shaped in both directions. Am I right in thinking that you're going to be sharing a poem with us, which is about that notion of sacrifice? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've got one piece, and I've got a really small piece, if that's okay.
We'd love to hear them both. Yeah.
So I'll do. So this was published at Where's First, and it took me about 8 years now after school to write this piece. I didn't know I could write about it, but I feel like I didn't write it for an audience. I wrote it to heal. If I can find this, sorry, excuse me. So this poem is called Girls Like Us, and it's basically going down memory lane as we were going to school and what that felt like. And right, let's get it. And yeah, so but every time I perform it, I'm like, oh, I feel like I missed something. I feel like something else is missing. But sorry, right, let me look at my phone. Yeah, so Girls Like Us. I mean, every time I look at it, I'm like, I want to change this title. And I had to just accept that it is what it is, you know. So this is called Girls Like Us. Girls like us. Girls like us go to war every day. We placed on our armors, tucked in our school shirts, lifted our skirts, chasing those white boys down double-decker buses. You racist prick, I shouted, running down Queen's Drive as he chased me with a knife. Because girls like us are forced to learn English quicker to save us from a stab wound in our backs. We wore expensive running shoes, hanging our keys from our necks to let them know that we are coming. Because girls like us settled in a foreign place, and we buried our mother's tongue in our back gardens to find the roots have outgrown even deeper. A sacrifice that haunts you every time you sing your mother's anthem, but you keep on dancing. You keep on dancing because girls like us grew balls with pink bows, and we passed borders with our homes on our backs, dancing two-step melody around the immigration officer. I flutter my tongue, recite my tribal name, explaining to him why I still smell like my grandma's spices and lime. Because girls like us are told to throw our veils in the river, no letterbox delivers here. And you wait for Trump to blow his trumpet and kiss the face of Boris Johnson, but you wait for the right-wing party to chant up your street. And you hide behind your curtains, sucking on your mother's olives, but you keep on dancing. You keep on dancing as he mutters his hate. You tighten your scarf to sit up, to let him know that you have unpacked your bags and settled here. Because girls like us learned how to defend ourselves, because some girls duck the snowballs across the road, but girls like us learned to throw the rocks back in their glass windows as he points at me. How are you a Scouser? Because Scousers are white and you're a Paki. You see, girls like us befriended our enemy. Because going home is every tear behind every school bus stop, telling your mother that school was okay today. School was okay today. You run up the stairs, hiding the scars on your face. And going home only meant singing your mother's anthem in a foreign place, but it's too broken to sit. So you stutter her vows like wahdati, wahdati, ummati, ummati. Thank you.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, amazing. You're right. It's obviously a very emotional thing. It's sort of tied very much into kind of mother, your identity and your relationship with mother and home and culture, and being pulled apart and responding to that kind of violence. Wow. I never really know how to respond when I've had powerful, music from Cleveland or a poem from you. I always sort of feel like this sort of shadowy presence here with nothing really powerful to say in response. Could I ask you to you're going to give us a second piece as well? You have another piece that you wanted to share?
Yeah, you mentioned something about putting mother in a poem. So I realised I write a lot about my mother, motherland, mother nature, my mother. And so I wrote about my father. I put my father in this one. And I just wanted to see what that meant. So I connected my father with football, but from a political aspect. So this is called a backbencher. I saw my father cry for the first time. He gave birth to the city. To remind me home is sketched across his belly, and the sirens did not stop yelling, and we kept on running. And this will never be our game to play. And my father spat the city out of his mouth, chanting her anthem in his foreign tongue. The red flag is the only song he knew. And I saw my father cry for the first time. He scruffled his hands in the mud to find the secret between our borders is the difference between this city and men in suits who suck their thumbs and fiddle their fingers in our pockets. And young men like my father, black curly hair, brown eyes, mocha skin, curl their tongues in their political lingo. They sat on back benches and learnt to watch from a distance. And I saw my father cry for the first time. He cradled the city in his arms, waiting to be loved. But all he knew that this glory does not belong to people like him. And the red flag is the only song he knew. And when my father died of a heartbreak, he told me to never give up on this city. For no first love kills with a dagger. Thank you.
Wow, powerful again.
I know, thank you so much.
Amina, thanks so much for sharing your poems with us today. It's clear. I can hear all the different layers of language in the work that you've been sharing with us today. I can hear the personal history. You can hear where you've come from, your heritage, and I can hear the voice of my own city speaking to me at the same time. It's like speaking with many voices all at once. It's been amazing to share your work. Thanks for joining us. You're very welcome to stick around for a little while longer, because we're going to be going zipping round to hear from another poet who has partly Arabic heritage, but has got his feet very much here in Australian soil. That's my friend Noor Abu Zaid. So you're very welcome to stick around and keep in with the conversation if you like. Manpreet, can I just check in with you briefly to see how things are going? And
We've got people tuned in from different countries. I've just realized I may have even been knocked out on that with this camera. So I'm just going to repeat what I said, because I think my mic was off. So what I'm going to say is thank you so much, Amina, for your poem. As somebody from a different background, it really resonated with me. What I've heard, somebody from a Sikh background, there's always been that Punjabi and English kind of conflict, and not somebody who's come from a different country and had to learn another language. But what's actually happened is we've grown up with that tension of the next generation teaching us Punjabi and saying be close to your mother tongue. And you mentioned mother, so I just want to say what you've said and what you've already reflected in your poetry, really strong poetry, really resonated with me as somebody from a different background. So thank you so much. We're going to go over to the comments right now. Big shout outs to everybody who's locked in. We've got people from all over the world right now. Shout outs to everybody commenting on YouTube. If you haven't said hello to us on the YouTube comments yet, feel free to jump in. Big shout outs going out to Fatima Lakani, who's locked in from Houston, Texas. Selhut. I'm just going to go by the different names that we see in the people like signing in to YouTube, maybe with usernames that they created when they were 16 years old. I don't know. I've done that as well, and it might get a little bit embarrassing for people. But Selhut, I think, or it might just be Selhut. It might just be like a shop that they're selling stuff. From Texas, hello from Texas. Big shout out to Johnny Turpey, who's locked in from Birmingham, UK. He's somebody who shares a lot of affinity with Salsa E-Arts, and an amazing visual artist in his own right. Navid Saeed, salam, sorry for being late. You logged in at 21:17. You are a little bit late, but don't worry about it. I hope you're enjoying what you're hearing. Hope you're enjoying the conversations and the poetry that we're putting across. Shout outs going out to Stephen Onaja from Nigeria. Welcome to my African brother in the house. Let us know what city you guys are listening from. All right, we'd love to know and picture where our audience is watching us, because we're all in different places. James is in Melbourne, Cleveland is in London, Amina is in Liverpool, Mohammed's in Birmingham. We have Ray's Karma in California, in America. So it's just really a real global energy that we've got going on here. So to know that Stephen Onaja, our brother from Nigeria, is locked in. Big love to you. Big shout out going out to Abid Hussein, another long-term supporter of Salsa E-Arts. Michelle 11, hello from San Francisco. Big love going out to you. Danny Darling, thank you for the hearts. Really appreciate that. Double A96 said, could be worse, Amina. You may have a Brummy accent with a Pakistani descent like me. I have a Brummy accent. I like to kind of mask my Brummy accent when I'm on the radio. So yeah, please keep commenting in the down below or wherever you're watching, in the sides or here, maybe one of these sides, and just tell us where you're listening from. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us the feelings that you get when you're listening to poetry, like the one you're hearing from Amina, when you're seeing the iPad drawing from Mohammed. We just want to know how we're connecting with you, and this is going to be a continuous series of conversations we're having. So thank you for tuning in to our global family. I'm going to hand off over back to you, James, to continue the show.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Manpreet, and thanks again, Amina. So to shift the kind of the focus now down under here, I'm going to be connecting you very shortly with a poem by my friend Noor Abu Zaid, who's kind of leading light really in the spoken word art scene here in Melbourne. He's part of a spoken word poetry group called Slamma Lama Ding Dong, who are based here in Melbourne, and he's an artist of note in his own right, and his work explores all kinds of different things. His own mixed dual heritage as an Arabic-speaking Muslim Australian, but also wider issues. So he's done a lot around political protest, particularly with regards to Syria. He has Syrian heritage, and also to do with the community here. And one of the things that I think has happened as the kind of Black Lives Matter wave has rippled out around the globe here is that it's re-energized debates here about Indigenous Australian rights. There's been it's reactivated and shone the light on that again. Over 400 deaths in custody of Black Indigenous Australians over recent decades that have not been investigated or looked into properly. And so what happened to George Floyd, what's happened in the UK to other people, what's happened all around the globe has rippled out here, and the protests here have taken on a local character as well as connecting with the wider themes as well. And Noor is very much interested in Indigenous political issues as well, and advocates for them as part of on the platform that he occupies there. One of the great tragedies for Indigenous Australians is rather like, I suppose, in India, there were hundreds and hundreds of different languages spoken in Australia before white settlers came. And many of these are being preserved now, but many of them too have been lost. And so that language has suffered in the same way that the people have suffered. But the poem that Noor is we're going to share is actually referring back to the Ramadan period. For him as a Muslim, it was very difficult to go through the period of Ramadan when you're supposed to be praying in congregation with people, coming together as a community, particularly at the festival of Eid. And he came up with a poem that we're going to hear from him very shortly, which is all about his experience, the kind of eerie suburban experience of seeing mosques shut down during the lockdown, and what his own particular experience of that was. So I'm going to ask Manpreet if he could drop in Noor's video and we can listen live, or not live actually, listen to a recording of his piece from the Ramadan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Noor Abu Zaid. I'm a spoken word artist, amongst other things, coming from you, from Melbourne, Australia, to share with you a piece of poetry. It's something I wrote in the month of April, which happens to be National Poetry Month in the US. So we write a poem every day, and it just so happened that April coincided with Ramadan and also this global pandemic we all find ourselves in. So here's a short piece for the viewers all over the world trying to congregate in the absence of the mosques and the absence of Jummah. I hope it means something to you all. Bismillah. We drove past the mosque tonight, lights off in the beginning of Ramadan, no cars triple parked or blocking the streets, no bored teenage kids hanging round the back hiding from their fathers, no old men finishing off their cigarettes, no women trying to squeeze into a tight space just because that's all the mosque committees could offer them. None of that. Just an eerie darkness, an emptiness. We drive down Sydney Road. Muslim restaurants this Ramadan, they survive on takeaway. No smell of apple smoke. Shisha bars as empty as the mosques, which is an awkward example to make, except still both a haunting image of how an entire population is forced to retreat into the shadows during the most sacred of times. We buy our sahlab to go, obviously. Sweet shops a skeleton of their former selves. We drink our piping hot cups of milky goodness in the car. We pray at home. Again. We try to create our own light because we are a people who will never settle for the dark. We rise before the sun anyway, and just like the sun, we will celebrate in all our glory soon enough again. We will celebrate anyway. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Noor, for recording that poem to us, which relates his experience of well, effectively of the eerie feeling of being at that very social, very communal time of year of Ramadan for Muslims, and not being able to connect and be social at that special time, describing this sort of ghostly environment. When I spoke to Noor about it, it's a shame he can't be here, because I think many of the things that he would have to say would resonate very strongly with Amina, with what she had to say, an equivalent, not identical, but equivalent experience. But what interests me about that piece is Noor's work, like Amina's, it can be quite combative. It can be about throwing back, fighting back against racism, throwing the insults back, finding a way of articulating, if needs be, the struggles that you've had. But also, he writes in this much more meditative way as well. It's a healing space for him. It's kind of like a wound, an experience of being a Muslim and not being able to connect and pray shoulder to shoulder in a mosque with people, and feeling that kind of tear, that rip, being able to just effectively vent through language and explore and work through these traumas, if they're major or minor. It seems to be a really important part of what these poets are doing. It's a punch back, but it's also the hand that clasps the aching limb and says, language will heal me. And I hope that resonates also with people on the Raise Karma platform who are watching from the kind of negative thoughts and negative feelings angle. So we're really into the final quarter of the show now, and probably heard enough of my voice today. If I can thank Manpreet for hosting in the background. We've got Mohammed, who's been sketching away in the background, and we're going to see what he's been doing to kind of chronicle and respond to the things that are being said. Special thanks to Noor for recording the poem, and a special thanks to Amina for joining us live from Liverpool and sharing those two beautiful, powerful poems with us. I'm going to hand over in a few seconds to our resident musician, Cleveland, who's going to give his own unique take, really. And this is kind of the structure that we very often fall into, that Cleveland absorbs all the things that have been going on and gives them back to us in this amazing wall of sound that he creates just using his voice and his different effects as a vocal synthesist. And as that happens, we're going to be, I think, probably flicking through some of the drawings and some of the visuals that Mohammed's been produced by us. So takeaways for today: use language, be critical of the way language is given to you, think carefully about it, think carefully about your words. They can be weapons, but they can also be a healing space. So it can also be your friend at times of difficulty. So we're going to pass over now and wrap up and have a listen to Cleveland and have a look at what Mohammed's doing, if that is correct.
Yeah, why's my volume so low? You turn me down?
Write it down.
I don't think there would be a perfect Congregate show with just a little bit of live technical issues. We kind of feed this in just to make it feel like, just keep it real, making it feel very loud. I'm going to shut up because I'm about to hear some drum and bass and I might just start raving over here. Right. Sounds of Clevland Watkiss in the building. Really excited about this section.
So I often think about the stories Can you hear me? Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I was just saying that I love the Liverpoolian accent. I often think about the first time I went to Liverpool, and here we go. How about that? How's that? Yeah. So I often think about the first time I went to Liverpool in the 80s, and what really struck me about being in that city for the first time. I was doing a music project. I was based there for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I always remember this because it was the first time that I've been anywhere, and when I came out of my hotel, everyone was saying good morning to me, and I found it the most so bizarre, man. Well, first of all, when I came out of the hotel, I remember walking down. I don't know, I was looking for some coffee or something, and people were saying good morning, and I was jumping out the way, thinking like, what? And then another person was saying it, and another person was saying, and everyone was just being like, just being greeting you. I never experienced that in London, man. I've never ever I don't know what it's like in Liverpool now, if folk are still that way, but it was just such a refreshing place to be, where just total strangers would say good morning to you in your passing, and I just always remember that. Yeah. Oh.
Amazing. Man, I don't know how long it's been since I've been waiting for the drum and bass Cleveland to grace us on Congregate. I don't. And you probably don't know this about me, Cleveland, but I'm a massive drum and bass fan.
Yeah, go on.
Jungle drum and bass, and I've been listening to your drum and bass music for some time. So that was an honor for me to hear some of that live. And by the way, he did all of that live, like from start to finish. Obviously, the loop was there, but all the vocals that you heard, all the layering that you heard, all the high pitched and the music, it's just everything was live, and that's something that you just don't see every day. So thank you so much for that, Cleveland.
Thank you, my brother. Always a pleasure.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, guys.
So any last words from yourself, James, before we wrap up? And maybe, Mohammed, you want to say a few things about what's happening next in terms of Raise Karma, about being on this platform? We've shifted from Facebook now to YouTube, which has been quite fun, to be honest. Shout out to the Raise Karma team, and shout out to everybody who's watching. James, any last words from you, sir?
I think there have been enough words from me today. Thanks to everyone for sharing all their stuff, for hearing from Cleveland, hearing the amazing sound, and hearing the poems from Noor and Amina as well. Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. I would hand it over back to Mohammed as soon as his camera gets live again. Amina, how's the experience been for you being part of this? I mean, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, and we decided to postpone this session in terms of all the things that were happening globally with Black Lives Matter, and like James said, the resurgence of political movement that is needed globally. But how's the experience been for you coming in now, a couple of weeks later, and just kind of sharing your poetry on this kind of global level of a live stream?
It's been amazing. I mean, like I told you, language is something that I think about constantly, and I just think about what impact I want to make tomorrow, and also how do I heal through that process. I mean, we've all got wounds, and but I also think it's a way to inspire as well. Really, it's just amazing that we're all connected. I mean, we wouldn't do this if there was no lockdown. I wouldn't be able to meet so many different artists in one platform. So I think it's amazing. But also, I just want to say, one of the reasons I always come on to talk is to inspire people to write. And people say, but how do I write? And I'm like, get yourself a really nice little notepad and a pen. And I always say, don't lift that pen off that page, because everyone wants to express themselves. Everyone needs that opportunity to express, and you have to ask yourself, is the writing for myself or for an audience? And no matter what it is, the first thing is for you. So yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, I've never really spoken about language before. This is the first time I've heard me actually express what language means to me. So yeah, I think it's been great, and I'm looking forward to see what other stuff you've got on board. Can I just say thank James, I think you're brilliant the way you articulate yourself. Mohammed is just drawing away, and then we've got some amazing music, and then obviously our beautiful host. So I think it's been nice. Thank you so much.
Well, he's a professor, don't forget. He's a professor at Warwick University, so he spent many, many years training himself. Is that right, James?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, technically.
I'm not trying to take away that you're an amazing orator, and the way you express yourself is really good. I'm just saying.
Enough, right?
Yeah.
Got to remember that. We'll also point out that Cleveland is actually a professor of vocal improvisation as well, technically speaking. So we want to
Cleveland is.
Well.
I don't know why I'm going to mention this, but these Mohammed and Cleveland are both MBEs. I know there's question marks around what that represents and what that means, but in terms of just being recognised in the UK and really just representing the voice and the sounds, the arts of what they represent and what they're championing in the community for other Asians and other Black people in the community, to lift them up and to inspire them to aspire to this level of legendary status, I would say. That's my opinion. But, Mohammed, your camera's back on, bro.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm no professor, by the way, but I tell you what I am. I am a sprayologist. Okay. So I think that counts as some kind of qualification. So no, look, honestly, thank you, Manpreet. And since you've been bigging everyone else up, I've got to say, Manpreet and his brilliant, fluid style of delivery and speaking also comes from his experience. Of course, he doesn't mention it, but he is also a radio DJ, right? So a qualified radio DJ that goes out every. Am I right in saying Wednesday night? Or was it Saturday night?
Well, actually, during lockdown, I've been recording things from home because this whole kind of lockdown period was restrictive, right? And so I've been recording. I do 2 shows. Actually, this is really interesting because I do a Punjabi show, which is in full Punjabi, well, mixture English Punjabi, on a Saturday. Radio XL, shout out Radio XL, you know. It's really interesting because you dip between those 2 languages. Sorry, man, you were talking. I just kind of went off on one.
No, you wanted to get an advert for Radio XL. That's also
yeah.
That's also fine. So no. I think we're quite blessed, really, that our team, Soul City Arts, we have Manpreet, who's been collaborating for many years. Cleveland, who's joined us as well, and I think it's brilliant that our kind of movement is growing. We've got James, who's kind of supporting all the way from Australia, who's working on some really exciting projects with us as well. Being out there, exploring a project that Soul City Arts is working on, which is exploring the concept of prayer and what it means in the kind of modern world today. And it's really exciting that we've got this reach, which is global. You know, we might be a community organization and we're about empowering communities, but I've always believed that, you know, our voice really is a global one as well. You know, we belittle community as if it's something that's just something on the side or something that's secondary. But I've always been a strong believer that community really has to be at the top. And I think in the time we're in now, some of you may have seen, you know, the artwork that have appeared in the streets of Birmingham with the I Can't Breathe image, and I've seen it on social media. But that really is about, and this period, this kind of COVID era we're in, it's about finally saying, putting the people first now. I mean, I'm on a board of a few places, and I'm not going to rant on too much here because I can go on. But I'm a trustee and a board of various places. But all of the voices that certainly what I've been trying to bring to the table is saying we've got to dismantle the system now, and we've got to make sure that the people's voice is there now, not this kind of bolt-on on the side. On that note, thank you. Keep connected every Friday. Raise Karma as well. We're going to be going live on their YouTube channel, so do subscribe to Raise Karma's channel, right? Which is this new virtual installation that's going to be running for a period of a month, and this is the first show of that. And also, of course, we're sharing our this stream across onto Soul City Arts. So if you missed most of this, then don't worry, you can see it back also on Soul City Arts, probably on Raise Karma's channel as well, I think. And Cleveland will be sharing it on his channel. Follow his Facebook page. I think we can we get some links onto everyone's Instagram handles and things like that? Amina, who's in California from Raise Karma, she's kind of manning the chat space there. So I wouldn't mind if you could post James's and Cleveland. What's yours? You want to do a quick mention, Cleveland, and everyone's Instagram handles or Twitter, whatever you choose.
Yeah, mine is Clevland Watkiss, Facebook.
Yeah, and you're also on Instagram, aren't you?
Cleveland Watkiss on Instagram.
Yeah, there we go. Raise Karma. Amina just posted on the YouTube chat. Cleveland Watkiss. I'm not sorry, not Amina.
Amina.
That was you're Amina. That's right. So Amina.
Yeah, mine's for Twitter and Instagram. Amina Atiq Poetry. So AMINA ATIQ, and then poetry. And if you read it slowly, it's Amina Atiq.
Amina Atiq. Okay,
was that purposefully?
Nope.
Whoa, that's crazy, man. And Muhammad's name is Mohammed Ali Aerosol. Like that's the name on his birth certificate as well. So
no, no, it isn't. Stop being silly. Okay. So yeah, mine is Ali Aerosol on Twitter, on Instagram. Keep connected with us, and also Soul City Arts as well, both on Instagram and Twitter. Do follow us. James, do you want a quick mention of your handles?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram. I'm James_Hodkinson, and on Twitter I'm at Dr_James_H. And if you connect with me there, you can connect through to all the other projects that I'm doing artistically and academically as well.
And finally, Manpreet, you want to get Radio XL in there? No, I'm joking. Go on, what's yours?
I mean, I suppose, just here is my name, Manpreet Darroch, right there. There. No, I can't get this right. Anyway, my name's there, Manpreet Darroch. Just all one word. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'd be happy to connect with you guys.
Okay. Big respect. Thank you, Manpreet, as well, once again, for manning the decks. Thank you from myself. Do keep connected. Let's keep building this movement over the coming month. We're going to be doing this every Friday night, 9 p.m. Thank you, guys.